Welcome back to Mrs. Krill's episode of Distance Learning, episode number 2. I'm going to continue tonight or today with a lesson with a quick visual dealing with capacity. So, at the top of my paper, I'm going to title it Capacity Continued. Dot, dot, dot. Okay, remember when we're talking about capacity, we're talking about how much of ounces, how liquid in a gallon, in a quart, in a pint. Okay, so this is when we're talking about capacity. We're talking about cups, pints, quarts, gallons, and ounces. So to help you remember the units of measurement when we're dealing with capacity, I want to give you a visual. So in this visual, the first thing I'm going to have you do, now you can use a whole page or you can use a half page, use whatever you want. I'm going to draw a really big capital G. That stands for what? You got it. Gallon. Okay. Now, in a gallon, we know that a gallon, there are 4 quarts make up a gallon. So inside of my big G, I'm going to draw 4 uppercase Q's. All right, so we got our gallon, and 4 quarts make up a gallon. But now, what makes up a quart? Well, if we flip back in our chart, in our table, and we look at our little capacity table that we wrote down earlier, we know that, okay, to make up a quart, we have to have 2 pints, okay? So guess what that means? Inside of our Q, we are going to write 2 uppercase letter P's because it takes 2 pints to make 1 quart. Okay, so we have our P's. Well, that's great. We know how to make a gallon, and we know that we need 4 quarts, and we know that to make a quart, we need 2 pints. But, guys, how do we make a pint? What do we need to make a pint? Well, that's when we need to go back to our conversion chart, and we look. Okay, our table. To make a pint, we need 2 cups. All right, so let's flip back over here. So, to make 1 pint, we need 2 cups. So, inside of each of those P's, I'm going to write 2. Let's do it with a black so you guys can see it. All right. So 2 C's make up that pint. 2 cups make that pint. 2 cups, 2 cups, 2 cups, 2 cups, 2 cups, and 2 cups. So there we go. There's your visual. Now, if we wanted to keep going, we could, but we can't. We could fit 8 little OZs in there, I guess, for ounces. But this will give you a good, quick visual when somebody says, well, how many pints are in a gallon? Well, 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 pints equals a gallon. So this is a quick visual of an image to help you remember your capacity units. Okay, moving on into measurement, into conversions. There's one thing I want you to remember when you're dealing with measurement conversions. One thing. And at the top of my paper, I'm going to write measurement conversions. Now, if we're converting something, think about a convertible car. We're going with something with a top up to something with a top down. We're changing the way the car looks. Okay? Same thing in measurement. If I'm converting a measurement, I'm changing it. Maybe I'm changing it from a quart to a pint. I need something smaller. Or I need 4 quarts so I can get a gallon. I'm making it bigger. Okay, so the quick thing I want you to remember is when you're going from a small unit, like an inch, to a foot, you're going something small to big, you divide. When you go from a large unit to a small unit, you multiply. So that's what I want you to write down right now. I want you to write down the words how to convert. And it's 2 simple rules. Number 1, if I'm going from large, now I'm going to write this in all uppercase, so you'll think of a big number, large, and then I'm going to something small. I'm going to write this in lowercase. I'm going to write this in a different color. Multiply. Okay? The second thing I want you to remember, I'm going to write this in a different color. If I'm going, number 2, if I'm going from small, so I'm going to write this small. If I'm going from a small unit to a larger unit, I am going to do the opposite that I did up here, and I'm going to divide. So I'm going to write that down. Okay, so now let's actually convert. Okay? Okay, so let's start with something simple. Let's start with maybe converting, let's go with time. Time is something we're all familiar with. So if I have so I'm going to put examples right here so that we know we're actually starting to convert. Okay? If I have 1 hour, how many minutes is that? If we go back to our chart, everybody should know this. We know that if we have 1 hour, that gives us 60 minutes. Okay, easy enough. But what if somebody looks at you and says, hey, that movie we're going to watch is 3 hours long. How many minutes is that? Well, we're not going to break out our handy dandy conversion chart. We don't keep that folded up in our back pocket. We need to know how to quickly do this. As I said before, if we're going from a large unit, like an hour, to a small unit, like minutes, we need to multiply. Well, we have to know what to multiply. So we're going to take the number of hours and multiply it by how many minutes are in 1 hour. So if I have 3 and I'm going to multiply it by 60 to get my answer. Now, we all know that 3 times 6 is 18. So if 3 times 6 is 18, then 3 times 60 is 180. So we have our answer. So 3 hours would equal 180 minutes. Okay, but what about if somebody says, I think you're wrong. That movie that we're going to see, it's 3 hours and 12 minutes. And your other friend says, well, how many minutes long is that? Again, you're not going to whip out your little handy-dandy table that we made earlier. So you need to know how to solve this. Again, we said we're going from a large to a small. Yes, I know that there are small in here. However, we need to figure these out first before we can add this in. Luckily, we already figured that out right here. We've already changed our hours into minutes in our problem up here. We know that 3 hours, because we just figured it out, is 180 minutes. So we need to finish this out to figure out how many minutes. All we have to do is add in these other 12 minutes, which equals 180 plus 12 is 192. So the movie would be 192 minutes long. And there it is. That is how you simply convert. Whether it's hours to minutes or it's pounds to ounces. If you're going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, you multiply by your base number. Okay, now let's work some problems like number 2, where we're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit. Okay, I'm going to write examples in blue. I guess I should have written this examples in green. I'll just underline it so you know that these examples go with this one and these examples go with this one. Okay, so let's work backwards. If I tell you that you're going to a movie and that movie is, we'll just say, now, this is an example. Remember, most movies are not this long. But let's say I told you, oh, well, the movie that we're going to see is 208 minutes long. And your mom looks at you and says, I don't care how many minutes it is. I need to know how many hours you're going to be gone from home. And you say, okay, Mom, let me find out. Well, you call your friend and you're like, hey, dude, look, my mom said it's fine if I go, but I have to tell her how long I'm going to be gone. You got to figure it out. Your friend says, all right, well, let's figure this out. So the movie, we know, it says on the internet, is 208 minutes long, but it doesn't tell you the hours. So we got to figure that out. So I told you earlier, when you go from a small unit to a large unit, you're going to have to divide. Well, that's great, but what am I going to divide, Miss Creel? This is where division comes into play. Ooh, big bad division. Now, some of you maybe go, oh, well, I know I can get 60 out of 208 3 times out of this number. Great. Okay. But 60 is what we're dividing by, because 60 minutes, right here, we already did that one. 60 minutes equals 1 hour, and we're trying to figure out hours. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to pull a piece of scratch paper out to do this. So the problem says 208 minutes. So we know that 208, our divisor, we said was 60. Now, we know, if we're doing Big 7 method, we know that 60 times 2, we know that 6 times 2, well, you can't see that. We know that 6 times 2 is 12. So that means that 6 times 20 would be 120. Well, that's close, but I think we could get closer. Okay. Well, we know 6 times 3 equals 18. So that means that 6 times 30 is 180. Now that's closer. I wonder if we can get close, if we can get even closer than that. Well, 6 times 4 is 24, which means 6 times 40 would be 240. And that goes over our amount. So we couldn't do that. So let's go with our 6 times 30. So if we write our 30 on the outside of our big 7, 180 right here, and we subtract, 8 minus 0 is 8. We need to make that 10. We borrowed from here. 10 minus 8 is 2. Well, we're left. Oh, Miss Creel's crazy. I'm sorry. That should have been that should have been a 3 because this should have been a 0 right there. Okay, so we have 3. Now, there is nothing times 60 that is going to give us 28. This number is less than our divisor. So all of you in math, remember that means we're done. This is the remainder. So we have 3 with a remainder of 28. So guess what that means? That movie is 3 hours and 28 minutes long. So now we can go back and tell our mom, oh, Mom, okay, we know the movie is 3 hours. I'm going to go back and use the same color we did here. 3 hours and 28 minutes. Done. You work backwards. Okay, I hope this helps you guys figure out how to do today's work. So again, for today, all you're going to do is break out your handy-dandy math workbook, your investigations workbook. Yes, I'm using Melissa Montiel's. Thank you, Melissa. And you are going to work on page 427. For starters, when you get here, you're going to figure out 1 pound equals how many ounces. You can use the table we created, go back and watch my video, or you can use the chart table on the next page, on page 429. So you're going to complete 1 and 2, both tables here, and you're going to complete these. Your teacher may end up asking for a screenshot of your completed page, but I'll keep you posted and just check on your Google Classroom what your teacher decides how she wants to see this. All right, thanks, guys. Can't wait to talk to you again. Have a good afternoon. Bye.